Donald Trump was convicted of all 34 counts in a Manhattan courtroom, surprising no one except the great orange doofus himself. Well, and maybe Eric, but then Eric is surprised anytime his shoes stay tied. So forget for the moment that the MAGA movement rejects these verdicts. These are the same clowns that rejected the results of the 2020 election. Who else in Republican leadership lined up to reject the verdict is crucial for how this plays out and what the way forward will be. And that's what we need to unpack. So in that respect, forget the MAGA politicians who owe their very existence to Trump. Not just the crazies like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, but also the current Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who ironically owes his position now to Democrats more than Trump. See, Democrats? That's what you get for playing nice. All of the MAGA politicians know what side their bread is buttered on. All of them are orchestrating the delegitimization of the verdict as expected. So, for the moment, none of those clowns matter. What matters in the immediate aftermath of the verdict is where the so-called establishment Republicans line up. These are the corporatists who traditionally have played the social conservatives and Christian fundamentalists like a fiddle while they retain power. The ones who cried tears as big as horse turds over Roe v. Wade and now can't backpedal fast enough. The ones who never went racing after Trump's approval because he was the Visigoth who captured their throne. The establishment Republicans rarely, if ever, speak out against Trump. But they recognize that while MAGA brought victory to Trump and some other nutcases in 2016, the truth is MAGA has cost the Republicans some very important voting demographics: white women suburban voters and young voters. And who is the de facto leader of the establishment Republicans? That would be former segregationist and current minority leader of the Senate, Moscow Mitch McConnell. Sure, there are other so-called establishment Republicans. Susan Collins used to be considered one, until she lined up to kill impeachment, citing that the president has learned his lesson. How did that turn out, Susan? Not surprisingly, Collins issued a statement delegitimizing the trial and verdict. But what about Moscow Mitch? How did the man entrusted with maintaining the reputation of the Republican Party as the party of law and order react to this verdict by the legal system of the state of New York? Republicans, after all, are all about the sovereignty of the individual states. What did Mitch have to say? Well, if you were depending on Mitch to save the republic, then you must have been counting on Robert E. Lee to do the same thing, because Yertle the Turtle did just the opposite, issuing a statement on the electronic messaging platform formerly known as Twitter, stating, "These charges should never have been brought in the first place. I expect the conviction to be overturned on appeal." So much for the establishment Republicans ever hoping to take the party back from MAGA. This is the same Mitch McConnell who voted against impeaching Trump for January 6th because it's a matter for the courts. Then when the courts do something he disagrees with, McConnell sells them down the river. McConnell has never let hypocrisy stand in the way of his political or financial goals. But with this statement, McConnell shows how skilled a snake oil salesman he really is. On the one hand, he participates in the delegitimization process, as expected. But he keeps his statement painfully short and lacking any details. He did the bare bones minimum. And why? So he can crawl out from underneath it and remain on top when this titanic MAGA movement finally slams into the iceberg head on. Mitch is actually playing both sides of the fence, and he has always done so. What about our democratic institutions? What about the legitimacy of our legal system? McConnell has already sacrificed those on the altar of ambition and political ruin. It's not like we could expect different here. But what one might have expected was more political calculus. McConnell is still betting on the wrong horse and hoping it wins the daily double, but ready to change horses midstream if he has to. The striking thing is that all the bluster, all the delegitimizing, and all the grandstanding reinforce one simple theme. Republicans only believe in the government when it works for them. If the elections don't go their way, it's illegitimate. If the court rulings don't go their way, it's illegitimate. They call themselves patriots, but they fundamentally do not believe in the United States and its Constitution anymore. That makes them anything but patriots. They are nothing but insurrectionists. You know who are patriots? The 12 people who woke up yesterday morning knowing they had to make a decision that was going to impact the history of this country one way or another. And they made that decision by putting aside their agendas and looking at evidence. That is the way the United States is supposed to work. And when it comes right down to it, that is what we have to vote for in November. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.